Okay guys, it's Pilot Steve, a quick flight from Mobile Regional to Gulf Shores International. About a 15-minute flight. And I've gotten my clearance from ground. The VFR flight, basically all they do is give you a squawk code and an altitude restriction and some taxi instructions. So they've asked me to taxi using taxiway Bravo. Runway today is runway 33 to the northwest, so we're going to taxi to the south end of the runway. This runway has a little bit of an intersection at the base of it, the south end of it. So they've asked me to do an intersection departure from Bravo, which is easy, because I just stay on Bravo until I hit the runway. And I've only given up, just maybe 500 feet of runway. So, and it's a long runway, so it's not a problem. So that's what we're doing here. Just taxiing across to the intersection. And the good thing is I know this airport fairly well, so it makes it easier. As soon as they give you the taxi instructions, you know exactly where to go. It gives me time along the taxiway here to check all the instruments, check to be sure everything looks right, everything's set right, go through the checklist. And I've already done a run-up on the way over here a few hours ago, so I'm going to skip the run-up and just make sure everything looks correct when I give it power. At this point, oil pressures, temperatures, battery, voltage indicators and all, they all look normal. That's about the only thing you can check on the ground. Make sure the right fuel tank is selected. We want to select the one with the most fuel in it. And get up to the hold short line and switch over to tower. Tell the tower we're ready. And they weren't busy today, so pretty much told me clear for takeoff. Asked me to fly runway heading. And so that's what we're going to do here. Since it's a long runway, just start applying power and watching everything. Don't have to hold the brakes. And here we go. And once again, I'm looking for 75 knots indicated to rotate, and I've got to reach the 75 knot mark before halfway down the runway, or else we'll abort. That's a good rule to have. Instead of looking for a speed at a certain point, we're looking for how much runway we've used to reach where we need to get to, or else we abort and just stay on the runway. And now they've switched me over to departure. In departure, it's asked me to do a left turn out to the south. 400 feet above ground, we'll retract the remaining flaps and put the nose down a little bit to gain some airspeed for the climb. And here, start my turn. In this airplane, with just me on board, and I am full fuel pretty much, so getting about 1,500 a minute climb rate. And when I'm not in a hurry like this, I can usually knock it down to 1,000, get a little bit more airspeed. But I like to go ahead and get on up. I'm only going to 3,500 feet today. Since I'm eastbound on a short flight, I don't need to get very high. Go ahead and cross Mobile Bay and speed the video up and get back with you on the approach into Gulf Shores, which is going to be a visual approach. Just going to talk to the tower and see what they want me to do. Talk to you in a few minutes. Pilot Steve back with you, and getting close to the Gulf Shores Airport. Was talking to Mobile Approach. They canceled with me, and about 15 miles outside of Gulf Shores, contacted Gulf Shores Tower. This Class D airspace, so you have to talk to them to land or come through their airspace. And they've asked me to make a left downwind for runway 27, so that's going to be landing to the west. And they've also asked me to expedite crossing the center line, because they had a King Air that wanted to depart to the northwest, which is basically where I'm at. They don't want any traffic conflict, so that's not a problem. Just turn southbound and cross the runway 27 center line for them, and getting the left downwind. There is a Cessna ahead of me that I was watching on the TCAS system the whole time, and I stayed above him a little bit faster and just kind of watched what he was doing. But it turned out that he was on the same left downwind, basically the same pattern for the approach, but he was enough ahead of me where he was just out of the way. So tower asked me to report him in sight, which I did when I made my left downwind, and they cleared me to land number 2 behind the Cessna. And about this time they've cleared the King Air for its departure, so the runway's going to be cleared. You can see here in front of me is a beautiful Gulf Coast. This is the Gulf of Mexico, Gulf Shores, Alabama, Orange Beach, Alabama. And it's a beautiful day. I'm sure there's a lot of people enjoying the beach. It's the Shrimp Festival going on this weekend in Gulf Shores. There's a lot of activity, a lot of people around. And we get a bird's eye view of all that. And so we're starting my left downwind now. You can see the Intercoastal Canal below me. That is a good marker for where you are in relation to the airport and how far out you need to be for your downwind. I'm sure a lot of the pilots that do training, that is a great road marker for them to know where to do their downwind. It's basically parallel with runway 27, runway 9. So a left downwind, you can see the runway coming into view here. You can see this canal is a great landmark for this airport. You spot the canal, you know exactly where you are and you know where you need to be. And at this point, just getting down to pattern altitude, which in our airplanes is normally 1,000 feet above ground level. This airport's right at sea level, so I'm shooting for 1,000 feet AGL. And in this case, it's 1,000 feet on the altimeter. And once I get there, then I start reducing power so I can get my indicated airspeed down to 127 knots, which is where I need to put the first notch of flaps in for the approach. And this airplane's kind of slick, so I have to come way back on the power and then put the nose up a little bit and let the airspeed bleed off. And once I get to that 127 knot speed, I'll go ahead and put in half flaps, which is the approach flaps. And then the next speed setting is 117 knots for full flaps, and I normally do that on the 500 foot call out on the Garmin. It'll tell me when I'm 500 foot AGL, and at that point if I've got the runway made, I'll go ahead and put in full flaps. On this particular landing, I wanted to go ahead and practice a half flap landing, which the speeds are going to be a little bit faster at landing, but it's usually a good idea to do these practices. If it's real windy or have a bad crosswind, normally you leave only half flaps in. Have more control of the airplane with the wind conditions. And so I wanted to do that today since it's nice and clear and fairly calm. Get a look at what the higher speeds are. Instead of landing at, say, 80 knots, probably land at 90, 95 with half flaps. And, just, like I said, good practice. Every now and then I'll do a 0 flap landing, which is usually at 100 knots. One thing you don't want to do in the pattern is get too slow. We've got plenty of runway here, and there's no reason to get real slow in the pattern. That's where all the problems start. So airspeed is everything, and at this point, airspeed is your up and down movement. We don't use the controls for vertical speed. We use airspeed and power. If you need to go up, just give it some power, and that works out pretty good usually, and you don't have to worry about getting too slow. So as you can see, everything looks pretty normal here. I'm a little bit faster, but the landing was nice. You just take your time, let the plane land itself. There's no problems. And since I'm a little bit faster, I'm in no hurry to make the first turn off here. And nobody's behind me, so I just let it roll out. Don't want to work the brakes and tires real hard. Let the plane slow down itself. Once again, I get the flaps up, and that usually helps the plane stick to the runway. And you don't do that in a retractable gear airplane because you don't want to touch anything until you get off the runway and get your brain set up so that you don't accidentally put the gear up instead of the flaps up. And in a fixed gear, you don't have to worry about that. Anyhow, tower's going to give me taxi instructions, which is basically just clear me across the shorter runway, the north-south runway, and go ahead and just cross it and go to parking. I'll park in front of the hangar. And enjoyed having you guys along with me. Please subscribe. Give me any comments or questions that you have, and I'll try to answer them. And until the next flight, it's Pilot Steve signing off.